All right, you squeezed one more out of me with just under a week until the 2024 NBA draft. Here is my final mock draft of this cycle. This year's been wild. The intel continues to flow through, and ultimately most of it is going to be complete and utter nonsense. Still, it seems like we're trending towards this being one of the more wild drafts we've seen in some time. This mock draft ended up a very unique one that's sure to attract the full gamut of YouTube comments, but with a draft as open as this one, I really believe a lot of these selections are on the table. Let's jump into it. At number 1, we have the Atlanta Hawks selecting Zachary Riza-Shea of JL Borg in the LNB Pro A-League. Make no mistake, this is not what I would do in the slightest. I think Alex Sarr should be the pick here, but from what I understand, this selection is still very much up in the air. There's been some rumblings, whisperings that the Hawks could be leaning a different direction from Sarr. He reportedly hasn't worked out for them, and I think there's some merit to them preferring the 6'9 Riza-Shea as a lengthy floor spacing wing. In theory, a fully realized Riza-Shea does work next to Trae Young with his ability to hit triples, capitalize in transition, and play some feisty off-ball defense, but there's no guarantee he'd become a positive contributor quick enough to get on Trae Young's timeline, and being brutally honest here, I think this would be a mistake. If the Hawks truly don't want Sarr here at number 1, I'd probably trade back a few spots, grab some extra value, and swing on Donovan Clingan instead. If the Hawks do indeed zero in on Riza-Shea, the Wizards get an absolute home run pick here in Alex Sarr falling into their lap at number 2. The team needs talent in general, and with Riza-Shea offering what I believe to be a pretty low ceiling, I don't think he's a shoe-in here if Sarr does go 1, and in that scenario, this is a pretty tough pick. With the Wizards though, Sarr immediately starts at the 5, using his length and strong shot block timing to protect the rim, get easy offense in transition, and he gets to continue honing his jump shooting. Kicking off their rebuild with strong two-way Frenchmen in Bilal Coulibaly and Sarr to create the Wizards would be pretty incredible ahead of strong drafts in 2025 and 26. At number 23, we have the Houston Rockets swinging on Donovan Clingan, one of a few landing spots I actually do like for Clingan within the top 5. I continue to assert that this is a possible spot for Clingan, despite the Rockets' best player being Alperen Şengün, who occupies the 5 spot. While many rebuttals to this move would be that Clingan will be a backup, that's going to be any player selected here, be it Reed Shepherd, Stephon Castle, Ron Holland. Whoever you draft here probably frequents the bench for a while. The Houston front office and head coach Ime Udoka have both proven to be big fans of talented defensive players, spending $60 million and a top 5 draft pick on that very thing last offseason, and Clingan offers some of the best defense in this draft at a position they spent assets to get last season in Steven Adams. There could be growing pains early in the process on both sides, but ultimately getting one of the best players in the draft here feels like it would work itself out down the line in some way or another. And opposing teams having to deal with the offensive-minded Şengün or defensive-minded Clingan for an entire game seems worth it to me with this pick. At number 4, we have the Spurs going a different direction than most mocks, taking talented Kentucky freshman Reed Shepherd. Most mocks at this point address the wing position here for San Antonio, meaning Riza-Shea, Stephon Castle, and Modest Bazelis are the popular selections. But if the Spurs want Reed Shepherd in this draft, they're going to have to snag him here if he'll be here at all, and his chance of falling to 8 especially is basically 0. At 6'2 or 3-ish with the best feel for the game and 3-point shot in the class, Shepherd would work flawlessly in tandem with Victor Wembanyama, toggling between lead and off-ball guard on offense and racking up stocks on the defensive end. While his defensive pressure on ball isn't stifling, he's got Wembanyama waiting for him as the best shot blocker in the league. In short, I think Shepherd is a near perfect selection here for San Antonio, regardless of what pick they use. 5th overall, we have another pretty unique selection in Tennessee's Dalton Knecht to the Detroit Pistons. I want to preface this selection with the fact that Detroit coveting Knecht would almost certainly include trading back a few spots to get him, but I'm also not sure Knecht is off the table at number 6 to the Hornets, so this likely isn't the reach most think it is. At 6'6", Knecht works flawlessly offensively next to Cade Cunningham as a sharpshooter who can get his spotting up, coming off screens, using above average athleticism, and handling the ball in moderation. The defensive fit here is the real question mark, as Knecht isn't great and would be joining Cunningham, who isn't especially great either, but all of Detroit's problems aren't addressable with one pick, so perimeter shooting will have to do for now. I know that Hornets fans are in a rush to succeed with their current roster, and I get it, but the more I sit on this, the more I think Modest Bazelis and Charlotte could be the perfect pairing. A 6'9 wing who saw a down year in the G League, Bazelis is still really enticing as a shot maker, transition weapon, shot blocker, and outside threat if the shot ever swings back around. With the Hornets, Bazelis wouldn't be relied on to create offense early in his career and could instead function as a play finisher and spot-up shooter, honing those things and becoming very complementary before focusing on the more advanced things like playmaking. Even if he remains a 6'9" role player, that's great, but if he blossoms into the handler and playmaker many think he could be, that would be a dangerous triple threat of LaMelo, Miller, and him. I'm a Mark Williams believer, but his pure rim protection does leave a little bit to be desired, and Bazella's shot blocking skills are one of a few things I see translating pretty seamlessly at the NBA level. It is a bit of a high risk, but this could be one of the last times Charlotte has a pick this high for a while. This is likely the last place Castle himself wants to go, but I really like this pairing of Stephon Castle and the Portland Trail Blazers, if he's still available at number 7, which all signs currently point towards that not being the case on draft night. To those who would say Portland doesn't need another guard, I'd argue they're still in talent acquisition mode, and this would likely be the best remaining player on their board. He's outright said he wants to be a point guard, but him on the wing next to Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe as a secondary or ancillary ball handler that can play ball stopping defense makes a lot of sense. The biggest issue here is that he's a bad three-point shooter being added to what is already the worst three-point shooting team in the league, but that feels addressable elsewhere or down the line, as Portland is set to frequent the top of the draft for a few more years. After landing Shepherd at number 4, we have the Spurs gambling on Serbian guard Nikola Topic with their second lottery pick. Topic has really run the gamut of draft storylines this year, seeing success in the ABA, switching teams, getting injured, getting healthy, and then getting injured again, and finally seeing a negative wingspan at 6'5" after reportedly having a 7-foot wingspan. Still, his cerebral, high IQ style is going to lend itself to NBA success in my opinion, and for the Spurs, a team essentially playing with house money here at number 8, I think he makes a ton of sense as a long-term table setter for Victor Wembanyama. I buy the shot coming around for Topic, and I think that duo could wear NBA defenses out for the foreseeable future. In this scenario, San Antonio locks down its backcourt for the next several years, rolling Topic out just a little later than Shepherd. I know most people would go with the proven talent in Connect or Devin Carter at this spot, but I really like the upside play for a team that might not see picks these high again for some time. Here at number 9, we have an increasingly popular pick, with Providence guard Devin Carter landing in Memphis, where his dad is an assistant coach. Even aside from that, this pick makes a ton of sense if the Grizzlies aren't in love with their front court options here. Carter plays some of the best defense in this class. He's hyper competitive, can hit triples, and essentially do a little bit of everything, which is obviously always needed next to Ja Morant and co. He likely wouldn't start in Memphis from the get-go, but would be a welcome addition to a team that's looking to compete as early as next season. I still like the Grizzlies to address the center position here if possible, but Carter's a great consolation add to me. Rounding out the top 10, we have the Jazz swinging on French wing Tidjane Salon of Cholet. At a bulky 6'10", Salon is one of the more project-y, raw selections in this draft, but with the right development could turn into a sleeping giant within this class. He can hit threes, run and dunk, and has great defensive tools, all made better by his very apparent high motor. He's at his most raw in the in-between phases of the game, putting the ball on the floor and some still too often lapses on the defensive end of the court. Salon eventually projects to be a big-bodied role player that could do a lot of highly impactful things, and the Jazz might just have the runway to let him develop into that in the coming years. This wouldn't be a pick that would yield results immediately, but rather in a few years it could really bear fruit, and all of the rumblings and whisperings are pointing towards this being Salon's range. At number 11, we have the Chicago Bulls taking a massive swing on Indiana's Khalil Ware, a prospect who likely has one of the widest ranges in this whole draft. At 7 foot, Ware can do a bit of everything in terms of rim running with decent athleticism and mobility, hitting some triples in moderation, protecting the rim, and even a little bit of drop coverage. At first glance, he seems like a no-brainer lottery pick, but there's been some reported concerns of a bad motor or a lesser competitive edge. If the conflicting reports that those concerns have been quelled by his private workouts with teams are true, there's a legit chance late lotto teams like Chicago, who could reportedly be looking for a center in this draft, takes the swing on him. Ware wouldn't immediately insert himself into the starting lineup, but he could function as a backup, get easy offense, protect the rim, before potentially blossoming into a bigger role down the line. At number 12, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder grabbing Colorado wing Cody Williams, the brother of Thunder star Jalen Williams. I'm leaning towards this being the pick for OKC on draft night. It's just kind of the perfect storm in that I personally think Williams will be on the board. He offers the lengthy do-it-all skill set the front office values at a position of need, and they've likely already gotten the up-close look at his work ethic, his close ties, etc. Williams takes pride in his defense, he can get out in transition, makes plays, and puts the ball on the floor, and while he's what I would consider to be a project shooter, OKC has heralded shooting coach Chip England on staff. There's reports Williams' projected spot could be much higher, maybe Detroit at 5. Not sure I buy that to this point. I'd guess the range is probably 10 to 14. So OKC might be in the market to move up just a few spots for the second consecutive year. Back-to-back buffs. At number 13, we have Colorado forward Tristan da Silva off the board to the Kings. I think this is a moderately easy selection based off who's available. Sacramento is likely looking for players who can hit the ground running and do a variety of things next to their current stars, which da Silva offers. He can shoot, dribble, pass, defend, and generally is just a malleable fit next to any core, and especially the Kings. The tandem of him and Keegan Murray works flawlessly next to Fox and Sabonis in my opinion. Da Silva is somewhat a jack of all trades, master of none, but I do think he could contribute positively in year one for Sacktown. There's been reports Ron Holland could be careening towards a draft night slide out of the lottery entirely with post-lotto workouts with LA and Miami scheduled. I tried to simulate that slide here, but I simply cannot see Portland passing on his upside if he's there at number 14. I don't totally buy he'll slide that much at all, honestly, but if he does, there's a few of these late lottery teams that I think could benefit from his immediate infusion of athleticism, transition scoring, and high motor defense, Portland especially. Again, in this scenario, they don't add the much needed 3-point shooting, but that's worth waiting on in order to nab one of the highest ceiling players in this class, who's still 18. If I were a part of the Portland front office, I would consider him at number 7, and I think 14 is a no-brainer. I've long said that Rob Dillingham could be in for a draft night slide, seeing as he's an undersized point guard with a lottery that just doesn't call much for that archetype. As always though, I really like Dillingham. He ranked as my 3rd best prospect overall, but the Spurs value positional length. Teams like Detroit, Charlotte, Portland, Memphis already have guard cores, and Utah already drafted a small guard last year. Teams like Chicago, Oklahoma City, and Sacramento are likely looking at other options. It just doesn't make a ton of sense to grab him in that 9 to 14 range unless you really plan on developing and playing him. If he does indeed slide though, I don't see him making it past Miami, as his youthfulness and spark plug scoring in a backcourt that could soon need those things is just too tantalizing. The defensive fit with Tyler Hero and Terry Rozier is admittedly not great, but I'd still bank on the offensive talent, and at the minimum Dillingham likely offers a ton as a future trade chip should Miami want to go all in again in the near future. 16th overall, we have the Philadelphia Sixers selecting Duke's Jared McCain, which isn't a flawless fit for a few reasons, but I cannot in good faith continue to let McCain fall down the board with his talent. I do think this pairing works on a fundamental level. McCain is one of the best shooters in this draft, a player with an immensely high feel that has connective passing and can run some set plays, in addition to not being a detrimental defender. His fit with the similarly undersized Tyrese Maxey is the only real issue here, but ultimately his ability to bomb threes in a complementary role off Embiid is just too enticing. He's the exact type of player that I think could have major impact next to Embiid for years to come, even eventually blossoming into a potential starter in that backcourt. If I were a betting man though, I'd say McCain will be off the board by this pick. At number 17, we have the Lakers, who now own this pick courtesy of the Pelicans, taking a shot on Deron Holmes of Dayton. Holmes has quickly become one of my favorite prospects in this draft, offering a little bit of everything you could want in a front court piece at 6'11". He was one of college basketball's most impactful players last season, scoring often and efficiently inside while adding perimeter wrinkles like shooting, ball handling, and playmaking to his game. Even better, he's a pretty staunch, versatile defender, albeit not a true 5. Holmes is one of a few front court pieces in this range I could really see making an impact from the jump for LA. You can play him off the bench, utilize him off and on as a go-to scorer, or in tandem with Anthony Davis as a face-up big who can switch. On draft night, I don't think the Lakers will make this pick, but if they do, Holmes would be at the top of my list for them and plenty of other teams too. At number 18, we've got a unique pick in the Magic gambling on USC point guard Isaiah Collier. This is understandably not going to be popular. I get it. Collier is a stocky point guard whose offense is pretty polarizing, but still offers a tremendously high upside if he improves in a few areas, namely shooting and passing. This Orlando team has phenomenal pieces all around. They had a great year, but is still one major piece away from being a legitimate threat in my mind, and I still think they have time to really develop a third weapon next to Banchero and Wagner. It's likely the Magic Magic lose some of that guard depth this offseason, I really like to gamble on Collier as a high-octane backup point guard for a few seasons that could blossom into the lead general this team needs. 3 unstoppable scoring threats with defensive pieces like Suggs and Isaac intermingled really works in my mind, as long as you can mix and match shooting lineups intermittently. This continues to be my favorite landing spot for one of my favorite prospects, Baylor big man Yves Missi to the Raptors. Missi is a 6'10 big with a 7'2 wingspan. He's one of the best and most athletic play finishers in this draft. He's raw but has really tangible upside in being able to put the ball on the floor some, switch on the perimeter, and defend the ring. With the Raptors, who look to be in need of some front court depth, Missi would have the runway to blossom into a legit player. And those pick and rolls alongside the similarly oversized ball handler that is Scotty Barnes would be immensely fun. The Cavaliers continue to have a really unique position this offseason with the option to go in a variety of directions, offloading one of their star guards or true center option in Jarrett Allen to allow Evan Mobley to play the 5. In this scenario, I've grabbed Tyler Smith of the G League Ignite, a 6'10 forward who offers a drastically different front court pairing for Mobley in that Smith can hit triples and offer some athletic pop near the rim. Smith likely wouldn't be a highly impactful player from the jump, but with his big frame, he could do some really baseline things like shoot open shots and play finish at a moderate level, and I could see him getting in on the action early. No matter what direction they go, I see Cleveland leaving with win now talent this year at the draft. Our third and final buff is off the board in undersized guard KJ Simpson of Colorado, who I think offers one of the best late first to early second picks in this draft. Most simply, Simpson can do a little bit of everything, toggling between an on-ball point guard who can wear out the pick and roll or pass with great touch, and an off-ball guard who can fill it up from behind the arc. I think the Pelicans are in desperate need of a malleable backcourt player who can hit the ground running, and I think Simpson's fit in the New Orleans core is pretty undeniable in that he can set players up or play off of them. Not sure I see this happening ultimately, but this is sneakily one of my favorite fits in 2024. At number 22, we have the Phoenix Suns grabbing Purdue Colossus Zach Edey, whose reputation at this point likely precedes him. At 7'4", he was one of the best and most dominant collegiate players of all time, averaging 25, 12, and 2 blocks en route to a championship appearance last year. He's a dominant interior force, but more skilled than people give him credit for, and one of the best and most consistent pick and roll finishers we've seen, making his NBA transition a bit easier than many might think. I continue to assert that the Phoenix Suns desperately need rotational players of all kinds, and I like sticking Edey in this lineup alongside the perimeter-oriented Booker, Durant, and Beal as an enforcer that plays competitive ball, uses his sheer size to get easy offense, and creates more opportunities with rebounding. There's some defensive concerns, but it's not that much worse than the current product either. At 23, I have the Milwaukee Bucks adding Dylan Jones of Weber State, a 6'6 upperclassman who stuffed the stat sheet in a variety of ways last season. He averaged over 20 points and is a legitimate scorer with the ball in hands, driving, pulling up, and especially getting to the line. I like adding another ball handler to this Milwaukee core, who at the moment is essentially set to roll out Lillard for another massive chunk next season. Jones' off-ball role is pretty murky at best currently, but I think there's a lane for him to actually get the rock in limited minutes for the Bucks, even as early as next season, if he can carve out some successful areas. At number 24, the Knicks take a gamble on Duke star Kyle Filipowski, who had some wavering draft stock over the last few seasons, but still offers a worthy gamble as a 7-footer with a modern skill set. There's no guarantee the Knicks are able to hang on to all of their front court pieces this offseason, and even if they do, the health of Mitchell Robinson has come into play a tad too much in the last few years. With Flip, they get a prospect who offers a drastically different look and adds another versatile wrinkle to their lineup. He's not necessarily a rim running big, but he's got some workable post game, mobility, he can hit outside shots in moderation, and can do some of the same short roll things as Hartenstein. There's no guarantee he sees minutes early, but I like Filipowski as a backfill in case things go south on a few other fronts. Again, we have the New York Knicks picking, and this one I fully expect to be traded on draft night on account of the Knicks not really needing to add a second or third rookie and the potential for really valuable swing picks or role players at this spot. If New York does keep the pick though, I like a gamble on Baylor guard Jacoby Walter, who at 6'6", if he becomes a fully realized player, complements this team's core well. His splits as a freshman didn't necessarily show it, but he projects to be a talented shot maker and one that can finish around the rim, additionally getting to the line too. I like him as an ancillary piece next to Jalen Brunson, or just generally a plug-and-play off-ball guard should the Knicks lose out on any of their current players in the next few years. With the Wizards' second first rounder, we have the swing pick to end all swing picks, French wing Pacome Daddier of the LMB Pro A. Like many other swings, there's a lot of refining to be done to Daddier's game, but he's got clear touch when shooting, even if the numbers don't quite reflect that, and he can potentially get easy offense off ball by using his size and athleticism in addition to spotting up. Even more, there's flashes of legit feel for the game and some great on-ball stuff, which if given the right developmental pathway could yield big results down the line. Daddier would be given the ultimate runway to succeed with the Wizards, being rolled out ever so slowly after adjusting to life and systems in the NBA, and on a team that's going to be a blank canvas very soon. At number 27, we have one of my favorite late first pairings in Tyler Kolek to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Kolek averaged 15 points, nearly 8 assists, and again had a consistent season shooting the ball for Marquette. He feels like an easy bet as a rotational guard in the NBA who can handle the rock, run offense, and make plays for others. That especially feels like the case in Minnesota, where Mike Conley currently handles the bulk of those responsibilities. Kolek doesn't add much in the ways of defense, but he could be a calming presence as a handler who can set up the team's bigs when Conley or Ant hit the bench. And there's potential he could create a little magic himself at times too. At number 28, we have Creighton's 6'6" sharpshooter Baylor Shireman, one of the oldest players in this class, but one who fits exceptionally with the Denver Nuggets in my opinion. Shireman had legitimate claim to being the top shooter in this class, shooting 38% on a blistering 8 attempts per game, and he even managed to grab an above average 9 boards per game in addition to 4 assists, exhibiting pretty good passing feel. The defense is the question mark, but otherwise Shireman fits snugly into this Nuggets team as a volume shooter capable of moving the ball the way Denver wants, and finding another lane of success like rebounding. Freshman Keyshawn George of Miami finally off the board to the Utah Jazz at number 29. I really like George's skill set, even if it's a pretty random blend of skills. At 6'9", he's one of the more touchy jumbo shooters in this draft at 41% on 4 attempts in just 23 minutes. And he's also got some nice pick and roll operator stuff with playmaking flashing seldomly. The issues are general athleticism and him turning 21 late this year, but otherwise he seems like a worthy gamble as a big shooter who can function with the ball in his hands a little bit. I like that for the Jazz after taking a risk on Salon earlier. Between the two, they could hit on a prospect that could propel them to the promised land, or they could both turn out to be legit rotational pieces. Rounding out what is likely the final mock of our cycle is Kevin McCullar, as I am now the only surviving member on McCullar Island. He stands at 6'6", offers some of the best defense in this class, but has a ways to go in improving his overall offense, and especially his shooting, being that he'll most likely be spotting up in the half court in the big leagues plenty. Still, I can't shake the feeling McCullar can be a legit contributor in the NBA if he can just refine his game in a few more places, namely the jumper. With the Celtics, he could almost function as a bizarro Peyton Pritchard. Instead of offering an offensive spark off the bench, he could stun lock opposing scorers with some of the best perimeter defense in the class, which overall would just be a nice wrinkle to throw out as the defending champs.